on the info track and the media track. And if you have a teenager in your house, you know what I'm talking about. Who does the systems administration in your home? These kids are different in 8 ways, and it has huge implications for the film. They want freedom. Choice is like oxygen. When I was a kid, I had 3 media choices. These kids have thousands of choices. They want to customize everything. I never got to customize the Mickey Mouse Club watching television as a kid. These kids can change their world. Industry after industry doesn't understand this. They want to scrutinize everything. When I was a kid, I saw a picture. It was a picture. These kids see a picture. What is it? An animation, a bot. They see a woman on a magazine cover and they wonder, well, how's she been photoshopped? Her cheekbones are bigger and her legs are longer. This is the integrity generation. They have very strong values. It's not true what the media says, that they don't give a darn. They care a lot. It's a generation that wants to collaborate and have relationships. It's a generation that wants to have fun, and this is good news for you. They want work to be fun. They say, over half of them that we interviewed said having fun with a product or service is as important as what the product or service does. They want speed and innovation in everything. They want that new thing, not because the old one is 6 months ago isn't cool. They want the new one because it does a bunch of stuff the old one doesn't do. So this is a demographic tsunami of kids who are not used to being broadcast to or being the passive recipients of content that are coming into the workforce and into the marketplace. Now you put those two together and you get a social revolution. I could show you 30 charts, and I won't, but they all look the same. They show the old HTML website that thought that the internet is all about websites and eyeballs and content and stickiness, being eclipsed by the XML-based community that understands that the internet is about collaboration and about building communities. So, Kodak EasyShare says you can put photos on the internet. Flickr says you can build communities around photos. YouTube beat MTV. See, MTV is the old model. MTV says, we create this content, videos, music videos, we hope you enjoy it. MySpace, or YouTube, says we create a platform upon which you can self-organize to create your own content. There are 45,000 bands today on MySpace, including my band. I'm in a rock band. It's called Men in Suits. Facebook is the place to hook up online, not Match.com. Wikipedia is beating Britannica. This is hardly fair. For those of you at the back of the room, there's a little red line along the bottom here. Any of you medical people, that would be called a flat line. There's a new blog created every second of the day, 24 hours a day. A lot of them are garbage, and some of them are bigger than the mainstream media. So what's going on here? Let me tell you a humbling story. It was Christmas Day a year ago when I gave my son Alex, who was 20 at the time, an advance copy of Wikinomics for Christmas. He said, "Hey, Dad, thanks a lot." Started reading the book. He came back and he said, "Hey, Dad, this is actually a good book." He said, "I think I'll create a community on Facebook." I said, you mind if I watch?" 15 minutes later, he's created the Wikinomics community on Facebook. 15 minutes after that, he has 6 members. By the time we're eating turkey on Christmas night, on the same day, he's got 130 members in 7 countries, 7 regional coordinators, a president, him, secretary, and chief information officer for the community. He sent out a PDF of the first 2 chapters of the book. I got kids writing back in saying, "Mr. Tapscott, we found errors in your book. And if you published it as a wiki, we could correct the errors." And the kids are placing demands on me to create value for them. How exactly is Mr. Tapscott going to be contributing to our community? What is this? Well, it occurred to me. Self-organization has been around throughout human history. language was developed through self-organization. There was no central committee of the English language that said this will be called a glass. It just kind of happened. But what used to take place over millennia can now happen on a single Christmas day. And that leads to the big one that I'm here to talk to you about. An economic revolution that's changing what is the film and how films get made. Throughout the 20th century, we created wealth through this thing called the vertically integrated corporation. It did everything from soup to nuts. And a Nobel Prize-winning economist named Ronald Coase asked a deceptively simple question 70 years ago. He said, why does the firm exist? If Adam Smith is right and the open market's the best mechanism to determine how goods and resources and information are allocated, why isn't everybody an independent contractor? And he said the answer is collaboration costs. The costs in an open market, he said, of search, coordination, contracting, collaboration, are greater than the cost of doing things inside the boundaries of the corporation. The big industrialists understood this. Henry Ford had within his boundaries a power plant, steel mill, shipping company, and glass factory. Why? Because the costs of collaborating in an open market were greater than the cost of doing things inside the boundaries of the corporation. Then came the early days of information technologies, and the boundaries of corporations became more porous. Then we saw the rise of the internet, and companies began to unbundle further into focus companies that work within networks or business webs. The film industry was in some ways the progenitor of this model. Rather than a vertically integrated corporation that hired inside its boundaries actors and cameramen and screenwriters and so on, it built a business web, an ad hoc team that came together to produce something called a movie. Now, what's happening is that collaboration costs are dropping so much in an open market that peers can come together and create value. If you can create an encyclopedia that's 10 times bigger than Britannica, created by 1 million people, but the quality is just as good according to the big study that's been done, what else could you create? Could you create software? Well, the Linux operating system is the dominant operating system in the world for medium and large computers. No one owns it, and it's created by thousands of people. It has some big customers, like China. Could you create application software? There's 150,000 open source application projects today. Could you create a mutual fund? It's called marketocracy. How about a bank? Peer-to-peer lending called zopa.com. Could you create a film? Well, we'll see in a sec that you can. So the rise of the prosumer. This is the page views as a percent, user-generated content page views as a percent of total page views. The internet is now not being created by companies, it's being created by the users of content. They're creating their own content. So there's a wonderful documentary called Good Copy, Bad Copy, where we're not only thinking about the architecture of how we bring a film to market, we're thinking about stuff like intellectual property. As there's a case to be made that you don't need to own all of your intellectual property. Of course you want to own some of it. If you're a pharmaceutical company, you want to own some intellectual property. And people have called the idea of putting intellectual property in the commons, they've called that socialist or communist. And you can sort of understand where they're coming from. Didn't Linux hurt Microsoft? Didn't MP3 hurt the record labels? Didn't Wikipedia hurt Britannica? If you take something from the private part of the economy and put it into the commons, doesn't that undermine the legitimate right of companies to make a profit? Well, it turns out no. We've done millions of dollars of research. Smart companies understand that they should have a portfolio of IP, some that they own, some that they may share within their business web, and some they may actually place in the commons. IBM placed hundreds of millions of dollars of their software into the commons, into Linux. and in doing so, saved themselves $1 billion a year developing their own operating system. And they created a platform upon